Hello, good evening, everyone. Hope you can see me. I can't see the live just yet, so I wish we could just go live and it would be okay. There's always a bit of fluffing around. Okay, I can see it coming through here. I'm just going to make sure I don't miss anything. Here we go. Just going to jump in here and make sure I don't. Let's see. It's funny, I can't see it yet. Oh, there we are. Perfect. Oh, I muted myself. Brilliant. All right. Well, just close this one down. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Dani Catania and I am a qualified dietitian. I've been a dietitian now for the last 15 years. I've spent a lot of time in the private practice field. I worked in 3 inner city private practices in Melbourne. We are currently still in lockdown. Hopefully that'll ease in the coming weeks. Although I'm starting to see people travel and I'm like, I have forgotten how to do that. We've so gotten used to wearing face masks everywhere. I see photos now and I feel like it's weird when we don't see people with masks on. Anyway, that's my current reality, but I digress. I've also worked my way up into elite sport. So I worked with the St Kilda Football Club, the Melbourne Victory Football Club, and various host of other clubs. But what I'm really passionate about is empowering you all to make really good choices with food and your nutrition and feel, that you have the knowledge and the know-how to do so. And one of the things that I think has been on everyone's radar, especially of late, is gut health. And if we think back to Chinese medicine, and at the stem or the heart of Chinese medicine, they refer to the gut as being the furnace of all health. And that's really important, that I think that we can take some learning from that, because now in clinical medicine and in clinical nutrition, we're starting to see the ramifications of better gut health and its impact on, or making the association rather. So we look at things like, so some of you guys will have heard about the gut-brain axis. So give me a yes in the comments below if you've heard of the gut-brain axis before. So compounds that are made in the stomach, in our digestive tract, actually feed brain health. But there's a couple of different axes. There is the gut heart axis, the gut lung axis, the gut skin axis, the gut circulation axis, the gut liver axis. So there's a number of different ways that our gut directly or indirectly affects our entire body. So what I want to share with you tonight, I'm going to grab some slides and as we dive right in, and let's do this. So I'm going to try and run it from here. Here we go. So if I go to present, hopefully you guys can see this. We'll still blow it up as well. Cool beans. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. Yep, I can see that on my screen. So let's kick it off. So basically, what are we talking about on the menu tonight? So I want to talk a little bit about how prioritizing your gut health can influence your metabolism and your ability to lose weight or even maintain a healthy body weight. We can touch on a little bit what are prebiotics, what are probiotics, and what are FODMAPs. You might be hearing about those. And what should I be doing as of now to improve my gut health? So we're going to cover off on those 3 things, or those key things tonight. So let's talk a little bit about the science first. Okay, so past research, and by the way, I should have mentioned as well, there is actually going to be a freebie for any of you guys who stay till the end. I've got an ebook that's basically how to get your gut into weight loss mode. So I should have said that at the start, but that's coming your way. Past research has told us that there is a link between body weight and gut health. that people are genetically predisposed to cultivating certain types of gut bacteria, are more likely to maintain a healthy weight, and vice versa. There are certain types of strains of bacteria that are related to having challenges with weight. And the presence or absence of certain bacterial genes, along with certain types of bacteria, can influence how easily you'll lose weight when you eat a healthy diet. We now know, though, is that regardless of your genes and what you start with, there are things that you can do that alter the makeup of your gut microbiome. And when you do that, you can significantly improve your weight loss efforts. And of course, we're not just talking about weight loss here, but we're talking about our whole health, right? And this is according to a 2018 study which pinpointed dietary changes as an effective way to knock your gut bacteria into weight loss mode. And I'm going to share some of their findings in the coming slides, so you can actually see what some of those things were, so that kind of what to do and what not to do to look after our gut. So let's talk a little bit about the most underrated nutrient, I think, and that is fiber. Okay, and there's a couple of different types of fiber. So let's start. So there's 4 different types. So you'll hear different words to describe fiber. It's not all one and the same. It's definitely not one size fits all. But you've got things like, number one, you've got resistant starch. Okay, so resistant starch is a type of carbohydrate, as its name suggests, that is resistant to digestion. And this kind of fiber acts as basically a prebiotic, right? So it escapes digestion. So it's a bit like, you'll see here, it says some cooked then cooled foods. The best example of this is something like potato. So think about when a potato, or say a potato chip, a cooked chip, by the way, is hot, right? And it's like really nice and fluffy, and then it goes cold, and there's kind of that texture becomes a bit grainy. So if you eat, say, like, for example, a potato salad is a really great form of, it'll contain a lot of resistant starch because you're eating cooked, then cooled potatoes. That's a great, that's types of carbohydrates that resist digestion. Okay. Then you've got soluble fiber. So as its name suggests, it's kind of, I think of it about it a bit like glue, right? So think of the clag that used to get in primary school, the one that if you ate it, it was like kind of didn't really matter. I had a kid actually that loved eating it, but anyway, that's another story. But soluble fiber is soluble, right? So it helps to kind of make up the texture. I told you we would be having that talk. So this is it, right? So it's going to form a nice, well-formed stool, okay? And then you're going to have this insoluble fiber. So insoluble fiber provides the bulk. And the bulk is, you think about things like any kind of peel on a vegetable, or any kind of roughage, nuts, seeds, that's all insoluble fiber. So it's fiber that doesn't dissolve in water. And this adds to the bulk of the poo. Okay, so it's really important that we get the balance right. And if sometimes what we see is sometimes there's like an imbalance, right? So if it's difficult to go to the toilet and you're finding you kind of getting bound up, it's usually one or both types. So sometimes even if you had enough soluble fiber, if you don't have enough bulk or roughage to help move things along and create that that shape or the bulk of it, then you're going to end up bound up. That's often what I see. Some people who start the nutritional cleansing program, sometimes I'll see that if they've just all of a sudden they're just relying on that one meal to have vegetables, and that's not enough. Usually we need to get some veggies in earlier, so snacks, that type of thing. So if you're doing 2 shakes in a meal, really focus on it. Even though there's usually a good deal of soluble fiber in the smoothies, you still want to be able to have some extra vegetables, particularly if you're prone to kind of getting a little slowed down there, right? And then there's this other concept of functional fiber. So it's things like where there's things like psyllium husk that's been added to foods, or Beni fiber is another type. Chicory root or inulin is another type of functional fiber. So they can be used to add some sweetness. It improves the texture, but it also forms part of the dietary fiber component of that particular meal. So I'm just going to jump across the comments just to make sure I haven't missed anything. Sorry, and let me just make sure I can't hear me on reverb. Hey guys, awesome, glad to hear you, loving it, and feel free to talk to me in the chat. Now I can see it actually, so it makes me feel like I'm not talking to myself or my computer and slowly going insane. Is this making sense so far? Is this kind of interesting? Let me know in the chat or in the comments. Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about fiber because it's pretty cool and it gets overlooked. Lots of people saying, oh, thanks, Mouse. She says she's loving this. That's awesome. So if we talk about fiber, there's 5 things that I want to kind of talk about. Number one is that obviously we just said it does improve gut health, right? That's why we're talking about it tonight. So gut bacteria will ferment some types of fiber, and then what they do is they'll go on to produce byproducts, right? So and what we mean by byproducts are they're things called short chain fatty acids or SCFAs, right? And those are particularly important. You're going to see them come up in the other couple of benefits that I'm going to talk about, but this is really important. And this is where what we feed is we're not just nourishing our body, but we're also we do need to think about eating for our microbes as well, because when they are healthy and happy, we are usually healthy and happy. It's a very nice symbiotic relationship here. Oh, and good, everyone. There's quite a few people saying this is interesting. Awesome. So we know also too that fiber helps with weight loss. So eating patterns that are high in fiber or whole grains can help you to lose weight in a couple of different ways. Number one, it's, we think that obviously things that are higher in fiber are slower to digest, they keep you fuller for longer, etc. But it's also thought that that's going to be really important in shifting those bacteria profiles that are going to be more favorable to losing weight and also maintaining a healthy body weight as well. We also know that fiber can help reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. And it probably has to do with the fact that high fiber foods will slow down the appearance of glucose, right? So when we're talking about low GI, low glycemic index type foods or meals, it's fiber that is a key component in helping reduce the glycemic index of a meal. This is really important when it comes to reducing the appearance of glucose after a meal, but also reducing inflammation because we are improving gut health. And I'm going to show you in a slide coming up that the choices that we do or don't make in terms of food can directly affect our state of inflammation, right? And our state of health. So that's coming up. But it's also really important that we know that fiber protects our heart. So again, it's through this production of these short chain fatty acids, these byproducts of our microbes getting what they need, having a feast day, and then being able to create those short chain fatty acids that are going to be really health promoting, right? Because we know that those compounds reduce inflammation and cholesterol production, which also leads me on to the next point, and that is that these short chain fatty acids also play a role in reducing our cancer risk, particularly bowel cancer risk is reduced with adequate fiber intake. And it can inhibit tumor growth. That's really how it works. Now, I could go on, and I'm trying to keep myself a little bit short because I want to get through this and I want to give you a nice overview. I am the kind of person though that'll drill really down into the science, so it's hard for me to give an overview, but there you have it. I feel like I wanted to say something else about that, but you might come back to me. Okay, so there's a couple of tips. This is also in the that giveaway that I've got for at the end for you guys. How to get more fiber at any meal. So, for breakfast, it might be that there's, there's chia seeds with, if you're having it, in a smoothie, or it might be that you're going to add some berries or some oats or whatever, right? So there's a couple of different suggestions. And the truth is, I know what I was going to say. The truth is that around 4 out of 5 Australians, and I could probably speak across other sort of westernized parts of the world, like US, Canada, New Zealand, potentially even Europe, where a lot of us are not meeting the requirements. I think the average fiber intake is something like 20 grams a day, which isn't bad. But the requirements for women are around 35 grams of fiber per day. And for men, it's around 38 grams of fiber per day. So we do okay, but we fall a little bit short. So let's take a look. Oh, I know what I wanted to say actually here as well. So one of the ways that I know to get a decent amount of fiber is one of the shakes that I recommend. So isolene is a really balanced, a nutritionally balanced smoothie. Whether you're choosing to have it once or twice a day, it comes in around, and I'm going to just talk off the top of my head now, I think it's 8 grams of fiber, but don't quote me on that. It is soluble fiber, and this is often where, so it's really great for getting enough soluble fiber in, but we often need to make sure that we're meeting our requirements in terms of insoluble fiber. Okay, so getting those veggies or a little bit of extra roughage. If you're going to have some pasta for your third meal, make it wholemeal or pulse pasta or something like that. And the other thing that I want to talk about here, and I'll talk about it in some of my product recommendations at the end, but it's also, I highly recommend an acacia fiber. So acacia fiber is a type of soluble fiber as well. It's a really good one that you can add to smoothies. You can add to most things. It's really good and well tolerated for most people. Particularly if it's gluten-free, and it's also low FODMAP friendly as well, which we'll come to, but a really good one. So that's acacia fiber there. So as I said to you a little bit before, right? So the choices that we make really do impact our gut health, right? So we know that, say, over on this side, right, if we're having too much sugar, or we're having a high fat intake, or we're taking antibiotics or proton pump inhibitors. So they're things like if you're taking Nexium or something that will, or Zantac is another example of basically an antacid, right? This is where we're going to, this is on the kind of the, I suppose the inflammation or the poorer health end of things, right? So we get reduced short chain fatty acid production, and then which leads to gut inflammation. We think it might lead to insulin resistance, and we think it might also, then obviously poorer, digestive health outcomes, right? But over on this side, so I'm just going to move my myself so I can actually see. So over on this side of things, you'll see like things with like probiotics, things like enough dietary fiber, not having too much sugar, not having huge amounts of fat is going to increase short chain fatty acid production. It's going to lead to better insulin sensitivity, lower gut inflammation, improved lipid metabolism, and potentially even reduce the risk of certain infections. So you can see that obviously there's like, you can make sort of those choices on this side of the equation, or you can make these choices right on this side, where we're going to reduce inflammation. So I'm not sure if you could see my mouse moving right like that. So hang on a sec. Here we go. All right. So is it? Here we are. So let's talk a little bit about what should we be doing for our gut microbes. Okay. So and we're going to sort of delve into this a little bit. And I think this is probably where I can say this is good news. Okay. So some of the best things, we just talked about the role of fiber and prebiotics, right? Big tick when it comes to improving our gut health. Now, one of the big things that came out of this 2018 study that I mentioned earlier is that artificial sweeteners can have a really negative impact on our gut microbes. Some of the worst ones are things like sucralose. So sucralose in Australia and New Zealand, I think it's sold as Splenda. That's the brand name. And I think it's things like aspartame is obviously not going to be particularly good for gut health. Saccharin, sodium, basically acetylsulfamide, potassium, all of the artificial sweeteners fall into this category, and they've seemed to have a negative impact on our gut health or our microbes. If you are looking to reduce your sugar, and some of you are thinking, oh, is my sweetener okay? I use stevia. Stevia is one of the only ones, and anything that ends with an ol, so if it's okay, let me just finish that sentence. So steviol glycosides or stevia is fine, because it's a natural leaf extract, and it's actually what we call a sugar alcohol, which means that it actually forms part of our soluble and fiber and resistant starch, and it actually goes on to improve gut health, which is why sometimes if you have too much of it, it can kind of make you a little bit gassy and a little bit noisy, right? And the other one that I really like, and I'm going to bring it up in a second, is a monk fruit sweetener. So again, in Australia, we've got a brand called Lakanto, and that is really good. And that's a monk fruit, so it's erythritol if you look on the back. And it's again, it's another one that keeps your sugar low, but actually feeds your gut microbes. So win-win, right? Then we can also look at the polyphenol content. Now, polyphenols is a fancy way of saying deep, rich color and antioxidant-rich foods, right? So that can stem from everything from deep colored and dark and bright colored fruit and vegetables. It also very conveniently includes wine. So wine does actually have a high, especially red wine, has a high polyphenol content. Now, if you're listening to this, please don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying go and drink lots more alcohol for you, because under the guise of better gut health. But knowing that everything in balance can help. And obviously, polyphenols come in things like berries and tea and seaweed and dark green leafy veg, all those good things. But a glass of red wine here or there is not going to hurt at all. Now, that also brings me to what would you have with wine? So my wine and cheese lovers, let me know if this is if you're finding this interesting or this is good news for you. You can get excited. Tell me what you're excited about. Is it a bit of alcohol? Is it cheese? Because I'm about to tell you that cheese has actually got a favorable impact on our gut microbes. So a little bit of cheese, and again, everything within reason, right? But now says yay for red wine. I thought most people would get excited. I got excited about cheese because I'm a cheese girl. So yeah, definitely cheese is a real winner when it comes to microbes. So yes, you can take that one. I'm very excited about that. So a couple of product recommendations, like I said. So that's that Lakanto. I think that's how you say it, the monk fruit sweetener. It tastes like raw sugar, you can use it in cooking. It's heat stable. I find it makes me less gassy than stevia, but it's a really good one. I think it's not particularly it's one of the most expensive ones, or the more expensive ones, but you definitely get what you pay for. And it's granulated like sugar would be. And even my very fussy meat and potatoes loving husband doesn't mind it in his coffee. So I'd say that's a win-win-win. We've also, as I mentioned, there's that acacia fiber. So that's what we would determine as a prebiotic, right? So you can add that to smoothies. You can add that to even, I think it's okay in orange juice if that's your thing. And it's up to, I think it's 2 teaspoons a day. And I'm just going to come back to the comments at the end. Let me just keep my train of thought here. As I mentioned, so really great. One of the reasons I don't endorse too many shakes, but this one changes the rules for me because it's a really well balanced shake. It has a great amount of fiber. So we've got, I want to go back. I'm in my head, I've got 11 grams. So maybe someone can correct me. Leanne's excited about cheese. If someone can correct me, I don't know if you've got one handy, but I want to, anyway, it's between 8 and 11. That's what I've got in my head anyway, grams of fiber, right? But one of the so it's going to help us get there to that sort of that over that 20 grams of dietary fiber, and get closer to our more like 30 to 40 grams of fiber. That's really what we should be going for. And then something like, now I really like the Isogenics Greens supplement. Again, this is particularly rich in polyphenols. So that the polyphenol content that we talked about, they got the big tick. That's where we talked about red wine. So let's not get too distracted by the red wine. I think something like greens can really fit in here. It's also a natural prebiotic because it's got a lot of those prebiotic fibers in there. Remember that in the soluble fiber, because it dissolves, it's going to form that fiber. And I actually think there's a little bit of insoluble fiber, because when we do make it up, you can actually see there's sort of some bits, if you like, that is that's insoluble fiber right there. And there is one other thing as well. What I want to talk about tonight actually is if you've been thinking about a probiotic, when should you use one, and which one should you choose? I think that's kind of, it's 8 grams of fiber. Okay, thanks guys. Oh, thanks Marissa, same thing as well. Awesome. So I should have gone with my first gut instinct, which was 8 grams of fiber. So let's talk about a probiotic. Now, I know for some of you guys, if you're tuning in from the US or Canada, Isogenics does have a probiotic product, but in Australia and New Zealand and around the rest of the world, we don't have access to it. And it's really difficult to get our hands on it. So I do recommend, there is another probiotic, and I can post the probiotic at the end of this session. But what I want to do is I want to give you a little bit of a heads up as to how to choose a good probiotic. So what to look for and when should you use one. Now, before I want to go through what you should look for, the first thing I want to say is think about, decide whether you need one or not. The best, if you have been on antibiotics recently or medication, that can disrupt your microbes. So it might be worth a course of a probiotic. If you've had some metabolic challenges, it might be worth a probiotic. If you're having some challenges, perhaps from a weight loss standpoint, it might be worth choosing a probiotic. And if you've had some digestive issues, so whether it's some irritable bowel symptoms or you've just not been feeling quite right, it might be worth a short-term course of probiotics. And then the most important thing is not just the probiotic, because I think we focus very much on the probiotics and not on the prebiotics. Remember, the probiotics are the actual culture that we have already, those microbes that are in our digestive tract. But those prebiotic fibers or those prebiotic foods are what feeds them. So we really want to focus, if I had to choose, we want to go 80% prebiotic fiber, which is why I spent so long talking about it, 20% probiotic. Okay. So how to choose a probiotic. It should contain at least 5 billion CFUs, so colony forming units, but ideally 10 billion or more. Okay, that's the first thing. Number two is, and this, you can always use these points as a cross check for whatever probiotic you might currently be using, right? It should be cased in controlled release capsules. And if there's anything that I've shared, that is the most important point there, because what happens is most probiotics actually get digested in the stomach before they even make their way to the small and large bowel, where we want them to kind of take hold and do their thing, right? So the casing, if they're not talking about an enteric coating or a time release type of a capsule or capsule technology, then if they're just in kind of veggie capsules, a lot of them, you're not going to really feel a difference or notice a difference because they'll be digested in your stomach. They're not going to do anything bad, but you're also not going to see huge benefits. And I'd be curious if anyone's watching this and they've noticed, so if you've been taking a probiotic and haven't really seen a difference, that could be one of the reasons why. It should contain several, and we're talking at least 10 different strains of bacteria. And it shouldn't contain any unnecessary ingredients. All right. So things like, I don't like them if they're containing gluten or corn flour or those kind of fillers. And they need to be able to tell you what are the non-active ingredients in the capsule. Okay. So I will post my recommendation if you guys would like me to share it. It does come from the US, but it's the best one that I've come across. And it's the only one particularly that meets point number 2, which is in those controlled release capsules. There is also something else. Again, this is probably a little bit beyond the context of this presentation tonight, but there's a couple of spore-based types of probiotics that are kind of, the jury's still out on using them as probiotics. Number one is so one school of thought is they're great because they take really well. So they're the bifidobacterium, just forgotten, let's start with B. I'll post it in the comments. But basically, if they're spore creating bacteria, what they do is they're very hardy and they take really well. So they establish colonies really well in our gut. The flip side of that is they establish colonies really well, and sometimes they can actually take over. And if you're at risk of small bowel bacterial overgrowth, that can be a challenge there. So for me, I prefer not to use those spore containing probiotics, only because we're still not sure of if they're particularly positive for everyone, or if they're only good for certain types of people. Just really quickly, guys. Oh, yep, cool. Leanne, I can post that at the end. And Marissa saying, is Yakult any good? Yakult's a really good question, a really good one. It doesn't do any harm, but because it doesn't come in that casing, there's nothing that's going to, what happens is your stomach will digest those bacteria or those probiotics, and the components of them will actually go on and feed our current microbes. So they're not entirely wasted. But if we are looking to correct some our microbial balance and create some, we want better cultures, we want better diversity, because it's both of those things that you want. Then your Yakult's not going to get you there, because it's got no protection against your stomach acid. So it's not a bad thing. But if you're taking it specifically as a probiotic, it'll fit into those kind of fermented foods. So fermented foods, fantastic. Again, going to be, but it'll be the compounds or the breakdown, the what am I trying to say? The compounds that have been broken down from those probiotics that'll go and feed our own microbes, if that makes sense. So a word on gut challenges. So if you are experiencing some challenges with your gut health, it's really important that you get some expert guidance. And probably what I should have said at the start of this is not intended to cure, treat, or prevent any kind of or diagnose any conditions. This advice is really general in nature. But what I do want to point out is that there are some types of digestive issues that definitely need a little bit more individual guidance. So there are things like irritable bowel syndrome is one of them. So typical symptoms include things like cramping, abdominal pain, bloating, gas, fluctuating bowels is usually characteristic of IBS. If you've got it, you'll know. Typically, it tends to come on between your 20s and 40s. That's like when stress is at its peak, and also it tends to affect women twice as much than it does men, because we tend to carry more stress and our brains are wired very differently. So if you suspect that, usually it's diagnosed once everything else has been eliminated and you're left with that and you need some help, definitely seek some advice. Of course, you can reach out to me. I'm definitely happy to, I'll post my link if you'd like to book in with me for just a free consultation call to see where you're at and where you need to go. But definitely there's things that we can do from a nutrition side to help ease symptoms, because it's really unsociable. Number 2 is candida overgrowth. So typical symptoms can include things like oral thrush, tiredness, and fatigue. You can have recurring, urinary tract infections or genital infections paired with digestive issues. You can often have sinus infections, skin and nail sort of fungal infections. There's kind of signs and joint pain. They can be some symptoms of a candida overgrowth. And again, with certain dietary applications and bringing certain things in, we can definitely get rid of it for the long term. And then there's the small intestinal bowel overgrowth, SIBO as it's known. So it looks very similar to candida, but often we see it with, it tends to be pain after eating. And we also see sometimes weight loss occurs just because it's affecting digestion and proper metabolism. So they're just some things that if you're seeing these things, or some people around you, get them to seek some help. And it's not just me that you can go and see. If you head over to daa.asn.au, you can find a dietitian who specializes in gut health. So, no pun intended, the bottom line. You guys have been so fantastic. I'd love to hear what you guys have learned and picked up from this. Tonight went a little bit over time, just because this is always a big one for me. But I'd love to hear what you guys have learned. I'm just going to go back through the questions. So, Marisa, I think you had some questions. You said I don't have any artificial sweeteners, so what am I doing wrong? I'll post my my free call booking link, and you can book in. We can have a chat and go from there. Yeah, cool. Oh, awesome, Lee. Really nice to see you, mate. That's awesome. I'm glad this has been really good. Well, guys, while those comments are coming through, thank you so much. I'll stop it right there. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been really useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a link in the comments. Thank you to everyone who stuck around till the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, so I'm going to post a link for some of you guys who are interested in learning about the probiotics, the one that I recommend. I'll pop a link to that. You're also going to get a link. It'll go to your messenger, but you can download basically the notes from tonight. And it's actually got a 7-day menu if you need some help or some suggestions of how to get some extra fiber in. So that's my special gift for you guys. And I will also post my link if you would like to book in for a call with me. And if there's no pressure, you'll always get some things that you can work on. If you'd like to continue working with me, great. And if not, you'll get some value from it anyway. So I hope you've enjoyed that tonight. Janet thinks that was awesome. Thanks, Janet. Mel says awesome. And Helena, just your last question. If probiotics are a little overdate, are they bad? They're not going to be particularly bad, but they're also not going to be very effective either. So you may as well use them up. But yeah, they're not going to be as effective as they were if they were in date. If it's only by a couple of months though, or a month or two, I think it'll be all right. Usually their shelf life is pretty conservative anyway. So guys, Kirsten, no worries, mate. So great to see you guys on. Thanks for joining me. I hope this has been of value. As ever, we'll be back here next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Melbourne time for another killer topic. I will share that with you as the week progresses. So good night, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Catch you next week. Bye for now.